My name's Simon Lane. I'm the director of Lotus Advanced Performance, which is our special operations house at Lotus. And Type 66 is one of the first cars that we've created as a department within Lotus. We have done this project really to celebrate Lotus being 75 years old. It's a really appropriate tribute because it looks back at our illustrious racing past, but it also has lots and lots of futuristic tech in it as well as a race car. This project came about really when I first joined the company about 2.5 years ago. I was looking for a project to celebrate our 75th anniversary, and I've had experience in the past of being involved in resto mod projects and also in continuation cars. And this idea came about because I discovered that there were drawings of this car unearthed in 2015 by Clive Chapman, the son of our company's founder. They'd been lost for 50 years and the car had actually never been built. So what we've done is kind of combine those two ideas, and that we're doing a very small run, only 10 production cars, staying faithful to the original design but completely re-engineered to 21st century standards. So yeah, Clive found the drawings in 2015, and the story is that he was looking for some F1 car drawings, found a tube in a box which contained microfilm, looked on the microfilm and found all the drawings for this car that were done in period by Geoff Ferris, who was draughtsman for Colin Chapman. And at the time, Team Lotus was right at the peak of its success in the late 1960s. Colin was coming under some pressure from the US market to come and compete in Can-Am because it was the fastest motorsport at the time. It was huge in the US. All of the competitors were going racing there. But at the time, they were very heavily committed in lots of other formulas. And so this didn't get past the drawing board. They just decided at the time that they didn't have the capacity within the business to go and compete in Can-Am. And so all the drawings went into storage and it was pretty much forgotten about. Fast forward to 2015, Clive finds these drawings and he's asked by Motorsport magazine to write an article about it for a 50th anniversary Can-Am issue.
Yeah, evidently late 60s, Colin got together with Geoff Ferris, one of the Team Lotus designers, and said, "Now look here, Geoff, we need a Can-Am car." So he was left to get on with it. And then, I don't know, 40 years later, going through the drawings one day at Classic Team Lotus, I came across these schemes in the schemes drawer, which is that thick with drawings. But what's that? And turned out to be the Type 66 Can-Am project, which never got any further than the drawing stage. I talked to Russell Carr, who was head of Lotus Design over the road, and they were starting to get into 3D computer modelling. So I presented the schemes to Russ and said, could you, come up with something so we can actually see what it would look like? Together with Barney at Lotus Design, they came up with this fantastic 3D rendering which you could rotate, and suddenly the car was brought to life. And we took it to the racing car show. Motorsport did a little article about it, and people said, you're going to make one. And I said, well, one day maybe someone might want one. I had no idea that would actually be Lotus. So from my point of view, the fact that Lotus, to mark 75 years, wanted to realise this car that Colin never completed was just the perfect project. But I did stipulate, I said, if you're going to do it, it really needs to be faithful to Colin's drawings. And while you have the opportunity, and certainly Colin would have taken it, to use all the modern technology underneath, we wanted to really represent the car as it was going to be on the outside, particularly because the aero was so interesting. This is pretty much a Lotus Type 72 Can-Am car, really. The side-mounted radiators, front wing, which was a unique feature for a Can-Am car back then. So aero-wise, with the big Le Mans tail as well, it was going to be unique. So really important to capture that. Same time, we love the funky trumpets, so we had to have those. You've got to have the stack. But underneath, clearly Lotus Engineering wanted to make it the latest cutting-edge technology. So it was the perfect combination of old and new. It was a lot of hard work, but they've definitely succeeded, because from the outside you've got no clue that this is a modern car. And I think from the driver's point of view, basically you get the chance to work your way into a Can-Am car. And the original cars are fabulous, of course, but to drive one of them is a real challenge. Whereas with the Type 66, with modern technology, you have the advantage of traction control and gradually building up, automatic if you want it, and then you can just go faster and faster and faster, and then depending on how fast you want to go, you can arrive at the kind of speeds that the original Can-Am cars were doing. But most importantly, it just looks fantastic.
We revealed the car just a few miles down the road from Laguna Seca, which is where it would have raced in period in the US last August. And we're going to build in total 10 production cars for delivery to customers next year, so 2025. 10 is significant because there were 10 Can-Am races in 1970, which is the year this car would have made its debut. And when you have a look around it, you'll see there's some really innovative features on it for the time. So in 1970 and 1971, all the Can-Am cars still had front-mounted radiators, and you'll see this car has a wing at the front. So this was designed around about the same time as the Type 72 Formula One car, which obviously was one of the most innovative Formula One cars in history. And one of the things it featured was side-mounted radiators, and they're on this car. The aero is incredible. We've now done over 1,000 hours of CFD work on it to make sure that it all performs correctly. And it develops just over 800 kilograms of downforce at 150 miles an hour. So, it would have been, in the time, quite an exciting car. Certainly quite different to anything else that was on the grid at the time. If you have a look at the back of the car as well, you'll see that shape at the rear is quite reminiscent of Le Mans cars of the period. So what have we done to bring it to life today? Well, we couldn't bring it to life in exactly the same way as it would have been built in 1970. So when you looked at the drawings, for example, the driver's feet were over the front axle and no impact protection. So the one concession to modernity is the nose cone. So you can see that nose cone there. That wing was originally open in the design, but what we had to do is extend the wheelbase slightly, bring the driver's feet back, and then put a proper crumple zone and crash structure in underneath the skin. So I would say that's been the biggest challenge of this project, is making this car look like the original, but actually drive much better, much faster, much safer, all new systems on it. So it's powered by a 5.8 litre V8 and it has 830 horsepower. That's mated to a 6-speed sequential gearbox. So although in the cockpit it looks like a wooden H-gate, actually it's backwards to go up and forwards to go down. As an option, the customer will be able to remove the period steering wheel and have a paddle shift. So if you want a really kind of up-to-date driving experience. The chassis is bonded in extruded aluminium, so what you would know Lotus for, but the body is full carbon fibre. So there is a nod to the carbon fibre on the Lotus graphic on the rear wing. So when you look at that, you'll notice that rather than painting it black, we've left it as exposed carbon. So you just get that nice kind of nod to actually this is a modern car underneath. So we've got traction control, race ABS, an anti-stall clutch. Power steering system, so it's designed to be easy, fun, but also very fast. It weighs less than 900 kilos, so with 830 horsepower, we're not quite 1-to-1 power to weight ratio, but we're pretty close. So in terms of performance on track, this would be a lot faster than any other Can-Am car from period. In simulator at the moment, we're about the same as front of the grid GT3. So on Laguna Seca, we're about a second a lap quicker than the current GT3 record. It's that sort of level of performance. Yeah, we didn't want to put anything in there visually that you can see that looks modern. So the only exterior hint is what I mentioned on the rear wing. The cockpit, we were very, very clear from the outset that we need to have Smith's dials, the rev counter needs to be on its side, it needs to look like the cabin would have done in period. What we have done a huge amount of work on is seating position. So we created a seating buck. Gavin Kershaw, who's our director of vehicle attributes, worked for Lotus for 33 years, very successful racing driver, does all of our chassis tuning. He spent a lot of time on that driving position, making sure that the steering wheel, the gear lever, the pedals, everything is exactly where you would want it to be. And he's now doing all the testing work in the simulator for us as well. So yeah, for those of us that have been involved in it, it's been a real privilege, to be honest. A real privilege to be able to bring a design that's never been seen before, that was designed by Team Lotus right in the middle of that successful period, with Colin obviously steering it, being able to work with Clive and his team very closely. It's been a real privilege for all of us that have been involved in it. And I know it's very important to Clive. I have to say, when we finished this car and Clive came in and sat in it for the first time, it was quite a moment. He said to me he'd never thought he would ever see this car for real. So to have done it, and I think it's been executed beautifully. You look at the the job that our design team have done in terms of surfacing the car, it really is beautiful. They've also done a great job of remastering the period's colours. So in 1970, when this car would have raced, we were racing in the gold leaf colours. And so if you have a look closely at the paint, you'll see that actually it's there's a gold metallic fleck in the paint, and they've done an absolutely amazing job painting this car. It looks really beautiful. So,
from my point of view, a selfish point of view, Colin and Hazel's cars were all internal combustion engine cars, so the fact that they're still being celebrated and appreciated, especially at events like Goodwood, is perfect from our point of view. And the fact that Lotus, they haven't really done a retro car, they've actually realised a car that Colin never completed. I'm not that big a fan of continuation cars, if you like. This is exceptional, this is different. And to celebrate 75 years with a car that never saw the light of day in period is just perfect.